All right. Can anybody hear me? No? Nothing? Oh, now you can hear me. Awesome. Well, welcome to 155. Welcome to 155. My name's Brandon Keller. I'm the youth director here. Hi. And tonight when you sat down, there was a little bulletin in your seat there. We're going to be using that tonight. In there also is a connection card. On that connection card, we ask you for some of your information. If you could at least give us the basics of like your name, what school you go to, what grade you're in, and maybe an email address or a phone number, that would be plenty. But if you want to fill out the whole thing because you're OCD, feel free to fill out the entire thing. On the back, there'll be some things we can talk about later in the message, but just know that that is there. So if everybody will get ready to follow along, here we go. So last week we started this new series called Get Dirty, and Chris kicked it off, and we'll be talking about this for the next couple weeks, really, of what does Get Dirty mean. And it's really kind of like the video said, of just kind of what does that mean to follow Jesus, and how are we going to do that? And that means you're going to have to get dirty to be able to follow Jesus and do what he asks you to do. And so last week what Chris talked about was that getting dirty is expected. If you're going to follow Jesus, you better expect to get dirty because that's what's going to happen. You're going to have to do that in order to follow Jesus. So that's what Chris talked about last week, was it is expected that that's going to happen. Well, tonight we're going to talk about what the video just kind of talked about, which is getting dirty is risky. Getting dirty is risky. It's the one fill-in on your outline. You should be able to get that figured out. Getting dirty is risky, and that's what we're going to talk about all night, and that's why there's only one fill-in on your outline. So why do we say that getting dirty is risky? Well, a lot of times when you think of the word risky, when I think of it, a lot of times I think of like things that could kill you, right? It's like, jumping out of an airplane without a parachute, very risky. Doing other dumb things like, those guys on Shark Week that get in a little cage with the sharks, very risky because you could die, right? That's not quite the level of risk we're talking about tonight. We're not talking about risk that's going to do you harm. It's really risk that in a different sense, but we all kind of think of risk a different way. So I looked up risky in the dictionary just to make sure we're all kind of talking about the same thing, and it says involving the possibility of something bad or unpleasant happening. So if you're taking a risk, there's a chance that something bad or unpleasant could happen. So what does that really look like? Well, when you're following Jesus, you're going to have to take risks. The good news is when you take big risks, there's big rewards because of those big risks. And so tonight I wanted to kind of step through some different levels, as you may. Who here plays video games? Anybody here play a video game every once in a while? Yep, good. So I'm going to treat this kind of like the video game where, one of those games where you have to kind of like go through a whole level and maybe defeat the boss and then move on to the next level. I remember in the old days where when you were trying to beat a level, you'd go for a while, and then if you died, you had to start all the way over at the beginning, and those are like the most maddening video games because you're like 20 minutes into this thing, one false move, and you're at the beginning again, right? A lot of the video games now, you kind of get to start right in the last 5 minutes or so, but when you had to start way in the back, that was frustrating. But anyway, back to what I was talking about. So, like a video game. So, we're going to start with maybe level 1 of being a Christian and what taking a risk and getting dirty would look like, maybe as a level 1, going to church, kind of trying to do the right thing. Well, maybe before you even get to level 1, level half, the entry level thing would be, you actually put away your phone and just paid attention all service. That would be half of a level. So if you did that, that would be risky. It would be risky because your friends might think you're paying attention. It's crazy, but anyway, you could do that. So level 1, though, maybe level 1 of doing this church thing would be that you talk to somebody at school or at work about church. Maybe not about God or Jesus yet, but just bring up the word church. Like, hey, I go to church. Which church do you go to? Or would you like to join me at my church? Right? I think that's kind of like a level 1 video game of kind of being a Christian person. But what could happen if you do that? Well, they could like make fun of you. They could get in an argument with you. They could tell you why you're dumb for going to church and why they're smart for not going to church. They could talk about you behind your back to your friends. I mean, they're probably already doing that anyway, but this would give them something really to talk about. So there's risk, right? There's risk in doing what I would consider just a level 1 thing of talking to somebody about church. And all you're saying is, hey, maybe you want to go to church. But there's some awesome rewards too, because what if that conversation leads to them coming to a church and because you know they need it, and all of a sudden you see their life change, maybe like your life has changed because you took a risk and were willing to get dirty by asking somebody to maybe come to church with you. So there's a great reward for that little bit of risk of maybe they'll make fun of me, but the reward is great and maybe you'll change their life. Maybe that's what they need to change their life is you to ask them that question. So what's a level 2 look like? Maybe level 2 is you're already coming to church here. Maybe level 2 is that you decide you want to lead a family connect group or something, or maybe you want to perform on stage. We got a lot of students on stage here performing. Maybe you just want to like pray in front of other people, because that's terrifying, right? Praying in front of other people. Anybody terrified of that? Yep, good. But maybe that's like a level 2 task of getting dirty, and that's something you're willing to take a risk on. Well, the reason you'd be willing to take that risk is because there's great rewards for that. What if you serving is what somebody else needs to see for them to realize, wow, I could do that too. And maybe that changes their entire outlook on church and religion and all that because they're able to see you doing it as well. Or maybe, you serving it as singing or playing an instrument or talking or praying is what that person needs to really feel that bond with the church. So there's a great risk in the fact that you're really putting yourself out there if you're like on stage or praying in front of others or leading a connect group. But the rewards are great as well. And I think if you talk to the people that perform on stage, or especially the connect group leaders, they'll tell you, yeah, it's a little scary, or I don't know all the answers, but the rewards are great because I get to see students' lives change, and I feel like I have this relationship with them. So maybe that's like a level 2 risk that you could kind of take. Maybe level 3 would be something crazy like you start tithing when you get a job. That might be like level 3 risk of getting dirty is you start tithing. And what's the downside? Well, I mean, you could totally go broke, and maybe you don't have enough money for gas, or you have to cut back to only 3 Red Bulls a week. I mean, crazy things could happen if you started tithing, but awesome things could also happen. There's a great reward that comes with that too, with God's blessing, and maybe you finally give up that one thing, which is holding on to money so tight, and God changes your heart because of it. There's great rewards that come with that great risk. Or level 4, and I'm not going to go on forever on this, but level 4 maybe is you help somebody outside the church. Maybe you have a neighbor that, they can't mow their lawn like we've seen in videos in the past, and maybe you can go over there and help them mow their lawn because you can do that. Maybe you can, help somebody in need, whatever that looks like. Maybe just somebody helping them outside of church would make all the difference. So when I'm thinking through these levels of 1 through 4 so far, I'm thinking video game. I'm thinking like level 10, like the ultimate, you finally get to the big boss guy. What does that level look like? It probably looks something like, like quitting your job and like becoming a full-time missionary or pastor or something. I mean, that's like super, super risky, but super awesome rewards at the same time. So you're going to have to take risks if you're going to get dirty for God. But what level of risk you're willing to take is completely up to you. But just realize the bigger the risk, the bigger the reward. The more lives are changed, the more friends are changed, the more the community's changed, all of that. So think about, in this room tonight, there's probably about 80 or 90 people here. Think of the difference we could make if we all started taking just a little bit bigger risks than the ones we're taking today. Maybe we're all taking level 1 or 2. Maybe if we all stepped up and took that one next higher level, think of the difference we could all make in our schools, in our community, in our jobs, if we have jobs, all of that. If we all just took one extra step, that one risk that maybe we're not willing to take right now, but we have to be willing to take those risks. And not everybody's at the same level, right? Like, I'm not ready to sell everything I own and move to Africa. it's just not a level I'm at yet, right? I mean, that's like a different level of video game. That's like a version of video game I can't have. Maybe I'm on, Atari and that's like Xbox or something. I don't know, but I can't get to that level anytime soon probably, but maybe that's the level you're at. We're like, man, when school's out, I'm ready to be a missionary. I'm going to go change lives. Maybe that's the level you're at, but everybody's not at that same level. So look at whatever level you're at and start working towards that. So tonight I'm going to talk about a parable in the Bible. If you don't know what a parable is, when Jesus spoke in the Bible, he often used parables, which was really he's telling a story, but he's giving you a different meaning by telling a very common story. And I think it's funny because Jesus kind of like talks down to everybody. He just assumes everybody's dumb, which is great because I'm dumb. So when he tells these stories, it works out great. And so he kind of talks at a level that people can understand. So that's one of the parables we're going to look at tonight. And it's in your outline. It's going to be on the screen and all that. And I'm going to read some of that for you. So this parable is actually told in two different books of the Bible. Two different Gospels tell it a little bit different version. Tonight's version is going to be talking about bags of silver. Sometimes you also see it known as the parable of talents, with how many talents these people have. And talents is also kind of money, but we're going to talk about it as silver tonight because that's the version I preferred. So Luke 19, let's get started. It says, "The crowd was listening to everything Jesus said, and because he was nearing Jerusalem, he told them a story to correct the impression that the kingdom of God would begin right away. He said, a nobleman was called away to a distant empire to be crowned king and then return. But before he left, he called together 10 of his servants and divided among them 10 pounds of silver." So like 1 pound of silver each. Man, that's pretty nice, a pound of silver. Saying, "Invest this for me while I am gone." I'm not sure why they throw this in there, but just to make sure everybody knows this guy's a jerk, I guess. But his people hated him and sent a delegation after him to say, "We don't want him to be our king." So they were sending this guy off to be a king. He was going to get anointed kings of this land. And he told all 10 of his servants, "Here's a pound of silver. Do the best you can with a pound of silver." But then all the other people were like, "We hate this guy." So anyway, so that's kind of where this is going. So after he got crowned king, so I guess he got his way, those people wasted their time, he returned and called in the servants to whom he had given the money. He wanted to find out what their profits were from the pound of silver. The first servant reported, "Master, I invested your money and made 10 times the original amount." So he now has 10 pounds of silver. "Well done," the king exclaimed. "You are a good servant. You have been faithful with the little I entrusted you, so you will be the governor of 10 cities as your reward." That's a pretty good reward. You get to be governor all of a sudden. The next servant reported, "Master, I invested your money and I made 5 times the original amount." And he said, "Well done. You'll be the governor over 5 cities." But the third servant brought back only the original amount of money, and he said, "Master, I hid your money and kept it safe. I was afraid." Go ahead and circle "afraid" on your outline there. "I was afraid because you are a hard man to deal with, taking what isn't yours and investing crops you didn't plant." So let's focus on that line really quick of "I was afraid because you are a hard man to deal with." The servant pretty much said, I wasn't willing to take a chance. I wasn't willing to risk it because I was afraid. I was afraid of the outcome, so I was unwilling to risk. Even though you told me to go take a risk and take a chance, I was unwilling to take that chance. And a lot of times that happens to us because God will lead us in a next step, and we all go, "Nah, I don't think so, God. That seems like a big step, so I'm going to stand back here. And I realize that's what you're asking me to do, but I'll stay right here." Because sometimes we're afraid of what that looks like and what God may lay out for us. And that's happened to me, and I'll kind of share a little bit about that. In my walk with God, I've been asked to take some steps in the past, and one of the big steps was a couple years ago, I was asked to become the director of the youth group up here. Now, I hate to break it to you, but this terrified me. I was definitely afraid of the entire idea of being up here. And the reason is that I kind of have some baggage that goes along with me that I was felt like, maybe didn't fit with me being the director up here. And I don't know if any of you have any baggage, but someday you might. And someday it may make you afraid to take a step. Because my baggage was, 10 years ago, I was an atheist. So I didn't even believe in God, and now you guys want me to come up here and speak to students about God. I'm like, okay, well, I guess in 10 years I've learned a little bit, so that's pretty good. Well, I also didn't do a lot of the things I tell you guys to do when I was a teenager. So, I was, doing a lot of drinking and drugs and partying and having sex and all the things we tell you not to do. I was doing a lot of that stuff. So therefore, I felt unqualified to talk to you guys. So it made me a little bit afraid that maybe I'd teach you the wrong thing because I didn't live the right way growing up. And then lead to the big point, which is I'm not even a pastor. I'm just a guy that has a job, and I come here on the weekends and pretend and do all this with you guys. And so, it kind of makes me afraid because, I'm speaking to you guys, but I'm just some guy. So it definitely makes me afraid, but what I had to do is I had to make a decision. And maybe someday you're going to have to make a decision like this, which is the risk worth the reward? And that's when I decided that it was. Because I decided after talking to friends and family and my wife and everybody of, how do I handle this? How do I handle this? And I decided that if I could make a difference in just one of your guys' life, so you don't make the same stupid mistakes I did as a teenager, it would be worth it. But it was a huge risk. I was afraid of the consequences, but I've decided that with that comes an awesome reward that maybe, if I'm lucky, one of you will make a change in your life, and someday you'll look back and go, whew, I'm glad Brandon was there to tell me how to do things right. Now, maybe it's one of you, maybe it's somebody in the past, maybe it's still somebody in the future, but that's my hope, is that out of all this, just one of you will make a change in the way you're doing things and actually kind of change your course. But it doesn't change the fact that I was afraid to do that step because I had all this baggage and things I just talked about that was holding me back. And a lot of times that's what happens to us, is that we're afraid to take a risk because maybe we don't want to expose all the skeletons in the closet or things that have happened in the past, so we don't take that next step. But we have to take those next steps, or if not, things will just kind of build up behind us. So I made that decision. Hopefully it pays off. We will see. I'll let you guys know. Maybe one of you can let me know in 10 years. You'll give me a call or chat me up on Facebook and let me know something happened. So Facebook won't even exist, right? It'll be like Twitter 3.0 by then or something. So anyway, so let's get back to the story. Back to the story of the bags of silver. So the guy says, hey, by the way, I kind of didn't do anything with the bag of silver because I was afraid. And so, I didn't do anything. And so this is what the king says. He says, you wicked servant, your own words condemned you. If you knew that I'm a hard man who takes what isn't mine and harvests crops I didn't plant, why didn't you deposit my money in the bank? At least I could have gotten some interest on it. Then, turning the other standing nearby, the king ordered, take the money from this servant and give it to the one who has 10 pounds. And they said, but master, he already has 10 pounds. Yes, the king replied, and to those who use well what they are given, even more will be given to them. But from those who do nothing, even what little they have will be taken away. And so Jesus tells this big story to tell us that we have to take risks, because the more risks we take, the more reward there is. But if we take no risks, pretty soon we keep trying to hold on to the little bit we have, and pretty soon we've lost the game. Does anybody here play chess? Anybody? Checkers? Anything like that? One of the interesting things about chess is that, and I'm terrible at this, is you have to stay on the offensive. As soon as you go into defensive mode in a chess game, you start to lose, and all you can do is just keep trying to limit your losses, and the other person just continues to attack, but you just kind of continue to just, suck in to the little things you're trying to protect. And that's the story that God's trying to say, is you have to go on the offensive. You have to take risks. You have to get dirty, Because if you're just trying to protect what's yours all the time, you'll end up with less and less and less and less. So you have to continue to take those big steps to get out there to take those risks. So you're going to get dirty doing that. So what does maybe some of that look like for you guys? Well, some of you, maybe you need to take the biggest risk of all, and that is asking Jesus into your heart for the first time. Maybe you're a total mess up like I was, or maybe you're just not doing things right, and you're like, man, I need to get on a better course. I need to take a risk. I need to change the way I'm doing things. Maybe tonight's the night you do that. And all you do is you just bow your head by yourself whenever you're ready and close your eyes and just say, Jesus, I'm sorry I'm such a screw up, and I need you to forgive me of my sins, and I need you to be there in my life. And that's it. He'll be the Lord of your life, and your life will start to change because you've taken that first risk, that level 1 style risk that we are talking about. On your connection card and up on the screen, there's going to be some other next steps that we can take tonight. And the first one is, will you finally take a risk and follow what Jesus is asking you to do? He's asking you to take that one step, and you're like, I'm afraid. I have this baggage. I'm doing this other stuff I shouldn't be doing. He's asking you to take that step and take that first risk, because you're going to have to take risks if you want to get dirty for God. You're going to have to do it. Are you willing to make a difference regardless of the consequences, regardless of what your friends may say about you? You're willing to take that risk and move on. The second one on your outline or on your connection card is, just like I talked about, if you decided to ask Jesus in your heart for the first time, you can check that box in your connection card. We want to pray for you and just be thankful for the decision you've made tonight. The third one on your outline may be a little bit tough. And this is where you actually have to do something. So, we've talked in theory about what you might do, but now I'm going to ask you to actually do something. I want you to write down the name of somebody that you're going to take a risk to help this week. And what does that look like? Maybe, like I said, it's a neighbor that needs help. Maybe you need to go over and just knock on their door and see if they need anything, because you see this, old person living there, or their yard's decrepit, or their papers are built up, or their dog's always running around. Maybe you need to just offer to walk their dog for them. Anything crazy like that. Maybe there's a lonely kid at school that you always see sitting by themselves at lunch, and you need to go over there and take your lunch over there this week and sit down next to them and just talk to them. Maybe that's the step you need to do. Maybe you're one of those students that already has that problem and you want somebody to come sit with you. Correct. Maybe you need a friend that maybe there's a friend out there you need to invite to church. Maybe that's what you can do to help that person this week, is invite them to church. Maybe you're terrified of bringing them here to something like this. We have B-Shot coming on August 30th. It's going to be awesome. It's a concert downstairs, regular time, 6 to 8 on a Sunday night, August 30th. Invite tons of friends to that, because it's a great, fun atmosphere. It's not going to be, maybe what you think is preachy or anything. It's a fun, great atmosphere. Maybe that's a great way you can take that step to invite somebody to church, is through that B-Shot concert. So tonight, I want you to actually write a name in that blank and think about who that is that this week you can take a risk and make a difference in that person's life. Let's go to the Lord in prayer, and we'll bring the band back out. God, thank you for tonight that we can talk openly about getting dirty for you, God, and that means we're going to have to take risks. Regardless of what that consequences look like, regardless of what people may say about us, what our friends may say about us, God, we realize we have to take that next step of taking that risk, whatever that next level is, God, that we have to beat. God, we ask that you give us the strength tonight to take that next level. And God, if there's a student here tonight, God, that decided they needed to ask you into their heart for the very first time, God, we are so thankful for that tonight. We are so thankful for that person that was here and that you've opened their heart, God, and allowed them to just be open with you, God, and realize they need you in their life, because we know their life is forever changed now because of that decision. God, thank you for this youth group and this great time we're going to have in Family Connect groups later tonight. God, we're just so thankful that we get to come to this place every Sunday night and just be around people that believe like we do. In your name we pray. Amen.